Okay, everybody, sorry about that. We've obviously had some IT issues with our live stream. I'm told that it is working now, though, so we are going to take it from the top. And thanks for our viewers who are hanging in there with us while we're trying to sort it out. So my name's Nicole Miller. I'm the editor of the Summit Daily News, and this is our virtual Summit County Election Forum. Virtual, something has to go wrong, of course. But tonight we're going to address ballot issues, and tomorrow night we're going to do a candidate Q&A. So I want to thank a few people who were involved in the planning of tonight's forum. So in addition to the Summit Daily News, that's Summit Realtors, the Summit Chamber of Commerce, Always Mountain Time, Summit County Builders Association, and the Vacation Rental Management Association. I'll give you just a quick overview of the rules. For most of the ballot issues we discussed tonight, we're going to have a proponent and an opponent. Each of those people will have 4 minutes to make their case, and then they'll have another 2.5 minutes as a rebuttal to the case that the person on the other side of the opinion made. We do have a few tonight, mostly local issues that we only have a proponent for, and those speakers will just have 2 minutes. And the reason we don't have opponents on some of these is because no formal opposition groups have formed yet. Okay, so we're gonna take it from the top. So a couple of you got a dry run there, but we'll start with issue 6A, Buffalo Mountain Metropolitan District Sales Tax. So Shellie, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Shellie Duplan, the district manager at Buffalo Mountain Metropolitan District. We provide the water, sewer, roads, plowing, drainage services to the Wilderness community. I'm a proponent of ballot initiative 6A. For over 8 months, the district has been educating the Wilderness community about the facts, purpose, and need for a proposed 4% sales tax in Wilderness. As part of this public outreach, the district has demonstrated clear revenue shortfalls caused by the existing district maintenance contractor retiring in June of this year after 35 years. The new company hired to continue services has doubled in price. In addition to rising maintenance costs, the district infrastructure is 50 years old. We're trying to stay ahead of it and are strategically planning for future replacements rather than pay skyrocketing costs for emergency response. Snow plowing and keeping roads passable in winter is a top priority. The district puts down 1,200 tons of ice slicer and sand each season and plows 5 a.m. until the last bus route at 1 a.m. Labor, equipment, employee housing costs are all rising. After completing an online survey with district constituents, the results showed a majority of voters agree a sales tax would be preferable to a property tax increase. The sales tax will spread the burden over a much broader base of users than just the property owners in Wilderness. A sales tax would be applied to and paid by short-term rentals in the district, as well as products purchased and delivered to products and to properties located in Wilderness. If the sales tax measure does not pass, the district must reduce the level of existing services or seek a property tax increase, or possibly both. It has been over 22 years since the district has put a ballot question before the Wilderness constituents, and the board of directors feels this sales tax approach is the best method to close our budget gap. For information, you can visit our website at bmmd.colorado.gov, and thank you today for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Shellie. All right, we'll move on to issue 6B, the Lake Dillon Fire District Consolidation. Travis, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Nicole, and everybody else that coordinated this event tonight. My name is Travis Davis. I'm the fire chief of Summit Fire EMS, and I'm here with my PIO, Steve Lipsher. In 2018, Copper Mountain Fire formally merged with Lake Dillon Fire to form Summit Fire EMS. Since then, the Copper Mountain Metro District has been collecting property taxes for all of its services, such as cable, water, and sewer, as well as for fire and emergency services. It then has been passing that dedicated amount of money to the Lake Dillon Fire Protection District as its share of the fire department operations. The current property tax that Copper Mountain Consolidated Metro District collects for fire will not change under this measure. Instead, that same rate would be collected by the Lake Dillon Fire Protection District. That is the same rate that taxpayers outside Copper Mountain pay for fire and emergency services, which is 9.055 mils. To the taxpayers and voters of the Copper Metro District, this is a revenue neutral question. It transfers from one agency to the other. This measure will have no effect on the staffing and response out of the Copper Mountain Fire Station whatsoever. The station will continue to be staffed 24/7, 365 with 6 personnel, 1 engine company, 1 medic unit. Summit Fire and EMS is asking the same property tax dollars that are now being dedicated to fire emergency services and currently collected by the Copper Mountain Consolidated Metro District. And instead of having that money be collected by Lake Mills Fire Protection District, which is the official taxing entity for Summit Fire EMS.
Okay, we are going to move on to Amendment B. This is the Gallagher Amendment repeal. We had some connectivity issues recording it during the forum, so we are re-recording this portion today, and we'll include it in the video for our viewers. So we'll get started with Lindsay. You have 4 minutes for the opposition opinion on this amendment.
Thank you. I'm Lindsay Singer. I'm with Colorado Rising State Action and part of the No on Amendment B campaign. There's a couple points that I want to be sure to cover. First of all, if Amendment B passes, we'll all be paying more in property taxes than otherwise. It also doesn't do anything to help businesses. It freezes the business assessment rate at 29%, but there's no plan for what comes next for business property. Also, it creates a lot of uncertainty. This idea that there's no plan for what comes next creates a lot of problems and uncertainty for both homeowners, renters, and businesses. So the other side will say that it's not a tax increase, but basically the assessment rate right now is 7.15%. Next year, it'll be 5.88% if we keep Gallagher. So if Gallagher is repealed, we'll all be paying higher property taxes. That's pretty simple. And this won't just impact homeowners, it'll impact renters. You know, just because people's home values are going up doesn't give them more money in their pockets. So at least Gallagher, if it's in place, helps to slow the growth. So we're all paying more in property tax, or most Coloradans are paying more in property taxes every year because of home values, but Gallagher helps to slow the growth. And it's important, you know, it's true, we are have the third lowest property taxes in the country. And I think that's a really good thing. I think we should be encouraging people to buy homes and to make rent more affordable. So on the point about, you know, there's some numbers that the Colorado Sun put out on the point about, you know, that we're all paying more property taxes anyway. In the last 5 years, property tax revenue is up 53%. And this year it's projected, just last year it went up 15% statewide. And even during a recession, this year it's projected to go up another 10%. So we are all paying more. Gallagher is just a check on that runaway payment. So let's see, one of the biggest issues that I have with Amendment B, as I said, the uncertainty about what comes next. The legislature is asking us to repeal this constitutional protection on our property taxes and then just trust them. They say there's a temporary freeze on rates, but then there's no plan for what comes next. And the Boulder Daily Camera called that cutting the plumbing pipes without having the equipment to replace it, which I think is a good visual for that. On the business side, it doesn't do anything. So I said the commercial rates will be frozen at 29%. I think those rates are too high. I think that the legislature could do something to bring down commercial rates, and I think that would be a good thing. Within the nation, we're about middle of the pack when it comes to commercial property tax rates, but I think there's definitely some improvement there. And I want to spend some time, be sure to talk about some of the issues with Gallagher, because I don't think Gallagher's perfect. In areas, especially in rural Colorado, parts of the Western Slope where property values aren't increasing quite as quickly, or there's not as much commercial property, the result has been that there's been a cut to local services, and I think that's a really big problem. It's not a new problem. The legislature even formed a committee a couple years ago to talk about how to solve some of these problems with Gallagher, because it's been a problem for a really long time. So, and one of the solutions they came up with was a regional approach, and I agree with that approach. I think when Amendment B fails, and I hope that it does, we should go back to the drawing board and come up with a regional solution that can work better for rural areas. And so, you know, there are these problems with Gallagher. I don't think Amendment B is the solution to the problems. So with that, I will urge a no vote on Amendment B.
Thank you, Lindsay. Patty, we'll pass it over to you. You have 4 minutes for the proponent viewpoint on Amendment B.
Thank you. I am Patty Theobald, and I am speaking in favor of passing Amendment B to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. I am a member of the Board of Trustees of Colorado Mountain College, and I mention this because Colorado Mountain College Board of Trustees has been suffering the effects of the Gallagher Amendment for 3 years. Longer than 3 years. For 3 years, we have actively fought the Gallagher Amendment. We have worked with the legislature for 3 years. For the first 2 years, they were unable to come up with a solution. At the end of this session, after talking about it, the legislature agreed to pass this on to the voters. Amendments to the Constitution of Colorado can only be added or repealed in 2 ways. One by petition and the other by referral by 2/3 of the state legislature. More than 2/3 of our state legislature this June voted to send this question to the voters. They felt it was so important. The tax issue that I'm referring to is on the receiving end for the special districts. And of course, our property taxes are only 20% to the state. The other 80% comes to our county. In Summit County, 20% of that goes to K through 12 education. 4%, 3.99% goes to Colorado Mountain College. 18% in my district goes to Red, White, and Blue Fire Department district. And if you'll notice on our current ballot, all of the local issues are put forth by special districts. The special districts are all suffering. When they're not able to meet their budgets, they have no choice but to cut their services. The first year that Colorado Mountain College fought this, we did spend the money in 2017, not the college, the Board of Trustees and our supporters, in order to ask the voters if they would release Colorado Mountain College from the restrictions of the Gallagher Amendment. It was an unknown issue to most of our voters, and we did not succeed in getting the issue across. Again, in 2019, with 2 years to prepare, we succinctly put the question to the voters, and through the goodwill of not only Summit County, but the other 5 counties that are in the Colorado Mountain College district, approved our question: may we keep your tax dollar charge the same into the future? We got an overwhelming, more than 70% of our taxpayers were willing to allow CMC to do that. We're continuing the fight because we know other districts are suffering, and we see many, many districts asking to have relief.
You are out of time.
Thank you.
Okay, Lindsay, we'll head back to you for a 2.5-minute rebuttal.
Okay, thanks. I think that a lot of the cuts that Patty was talking about are part of the problem with Gallagher that I mentioned, and they definitely need to be approached. But in the regional approach would address that. I think it sounds like the local approach worked for you, getting more taxes from, or getting reaching your ballot to get more money for CMC. But so I think that regional and local approach works. The way that this got on the ballot was pushed through at the end of a weird, it's a weird year. It was pushed through at the end of a weird session by a legislature that's feeling a lot of pressure on the budget, understandably for them. But it was rushed through. The legislature created the ballot language, which is biased. It's biased ballot language. It starts off without raising property tax rates, which is misleading to voters because you will be paying more property taxes if this passes. And then the legislature went on to, they also get to approve the Blue Book, which is the voter information guide that every single voter in Colorado gets. And they went on to make unprecedented changes to the language in the Blue Book, which really, people get that in their mailbox and think it's unbiased, but the way that they rewrote the nonpartisan legislative staff's language really camouflages the fact that this is a tax increase, which is in the interest of the legislature. So I don't trust, if they're playing those kinds of games with the ballot language in the Blue Book, I don't trust them with the plan that they don't have that comes next. We're just supposed to, repeal Gallagher, give ourselves all a property tax increase, and a property tax increase next year, and then unknown for the future. Another point is that
I apologize. You have another 30 seconds left.
Oh, okay. I just want to say there's a lot of problems with decoupling business and residential. It could open up doors for people to put more ballot issues, increasing commercial taxes. You could see that as a possibility for people who think they're paying too much. Businesses need to pay their own fair share, but I'll wrap it up with that. I just think Amendment B is not the solution for fixing Gallagher.
Perfect. Thank you, Lindsay. And Patty, we'll send it back to you for the last 2.5 minutes for your rebuttal.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, Lindsay, in saying that people's taxes will go up. And the language in this is saying that your tax rate will not go up. But as the value of your home or your business increases, so will your taxes. And that is the formula for taxes. The biggest problem I see is for the taxpayers. It's either homeowners or everyone else. Everyone else are restaurant owners, grocery stores, gas stations, fire departments, private property that is not developed, large private open space. The big ranches that we see down the blue are all being taxed at 4 times what the residential tax is. If we could level the playing field by just stopping the ongoing increase to the non-residential and allowing the residential to be raised a small amount, we would be able to at least allow people, especially during this pandemic, to be able to recover a little bit better and more easily. With higher property taxes coming up in 2 months, employers will not be able to give benefits, they will not be able to give health insurance, they will not be able to give full schedules, and they will even have to lay off some of their employees. This becomes a critical issue to our entire economy. So the question is tax. How much, who pays? And we'd just like to level the playing field, at the same time funding adequately all of our special districts. So please vote yes. Repeal the Gallagher Amendment. Yes on B. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Patty. Okay, we'll move on to Amendment 76. That's the citizenship requirement for voting. So Joe is going to present the proponent opinion. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Nicole. My name is Joe Stengel. I am the registered agent for Amendment 76 and a proponent of this initiative that it is intending to amend the Colorado Constitution, specifically at Article 7, Section 1, which currently states that every citizen of the United States who has attained the age of 18 is entitled to vote. We're making a prospective language change and striking the words every citizen and putting in place only a citizen of the United States who has attained the age of 18 is entitled to vote. We believe this is very important because voting is a basic and very fundamental right that we want to make sure is enshrined in the Colorado Constitution, that those that can vote either are a native citizen or a naturalized citizen. We believe that only a citizen should be entitled to vote in our elections in the state of Colorado. And again, that's preserving that most basic fundamental right, and we believe that is important. And it goes to the fundamental, it's essentially, it is a ambiguous term when it says every citizen. If you look at the dictionary, a citizen is defined as a resident of a city and town. So it leads to some ambiguous interpretations, and it allows different interpretations in certain circumstances. We're eliminating that ambiguity and enshrining it that only a citizen of the United States is entitled to vote, again, preserving that most basic fundamental right that we all value and respect. So this is a pretty simple initiative, only a 3-word change from what currently was a 2-word initiative. So Amendment 76 isn't complicated and it isn't difficult to understand. And we believe and we hope that the voters will determine that voting should be limited and only extended to United States citizens in the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. We'll move on to Peter, who's going to present the opposing opinion. You have 4 minutes.
Hi, I'm Peter Bakken with the Mountain Dreamers Immigrant Rights Group in Summit County. Amendment 76 asks us to amend our state constitution by answering yes or no to this statement on the ballot. Quote, to be qualified to vote at any election, an individual must be a United States citizen, end quote. Even though Colorado already requires in state law that all voters in all elections must be US citizens. And the Constitution currently does state that every citizen of the United States who is 18, et cetera, and qualified shall be able to vote. We are voting no on Amendment 76 for the following reasons. First, Amendment 76 is an anti-immigrant measure placed onto our ballot with $1.42 million from outside of Colorado by citizen voters based in Florida. They wish to perpetuate the false narrative that we allow non-citizens to vote in Colorado and that we need to protect our state and our voting processes from immigrants, neither of which is true. This effort is meant to and will suppress the votes of people who are naturalized US citizens and the votes of US citizens of color by sowing confusion in these communities about just who is eligible to vote and by intimidating and discouraging them, qualified voters, so they don't vote. Amendment 76 perpetuates the harmful idea that US citizen immigrants and their families are not an important part of our electorate and should not have a voice in our Colorado communities. Second, Amendment 76 will disenfranchise up to 24,000 17-year-old voters who in Colorado law are now allowed to vote in primary elections if they will be 18 by the general election. This expansion of our electorate was part of the Colorado Votes Act passed in 2019. Amendment 76's change in our Constitution's language would overturn this provision and would silence thousands of young people eager to begin participating in our democratic system. Since young US citizens who turn 18 before the general election can vote in it, it is only right and fitting that they be allowed to participate in choosing the candidates for that election in a primary ahead of time. When people engage early in civic processes such as voting, they're much more likely to stay engaged over their lifetimes. The Colorado Votes Act was a win for our democracy and our communities. In this case, Amendment 76 is an anti-democratic attempt to overturn the will of Colorado's voters as expressed through their legislators with the passage in 2019 of the Colorado Votes Act. Amendment 76's proponents have been working state by state to try to implement similar constitutional amendments. Currently, it's my understanding that 48 states have language similar to Colorado's and have had for a long time without a problem. Amendment 76's proponents are implying that our elections are not secure and something needs to be fixed. This could not be further from the truth, especially in Colorado. We already have a US citizenship requirement for voting. We have a secure process that ensures that only those who meet the legal requirements can register. and we are a national leader in fair, secure, and accessible elections. This November, Mountain Dreamers will join a coalition that includes the ACLU, the Colorado Education Association, the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, the Center for Health Progress, and many other respected organizations. And we will stand up for Colorado's immigrants and communities of color, and for the young Coloradans engaging for the first time in our democracy by voting no on 76. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. All right, Joe, I have 2.5 minutes for you for a rebuttal.
Thank you, Nicole. I think I'd like to start with the proposition that this will affect the age voting requirements or restrictions on the voting age. It simply does not. This amendment doesn't alter that current language in Article 7, Section 1, which remains at 18. If the proponents want to make that case, I think they're misleading the public. We're not making any restrictive changes to the voting age, and that the amendment doesn't go there. As far as the following proponents or the opponent's viewpoint that this is anti-immigration, this initiative simply says that the people who are entitled to the vote should be citizens of the United States. That includes immigrants or native citizens. Immigrants that go through the process that become citizens are entitled to vote. This simply enshrines that most basic and fundamental right. What I think the proponents are saying, this is a initiative looking for a solution to where there is no problem, and that's frankly misleading. If this initiative does nothing, why are they opposing it? And they need to ask the question, why would they feel that only a US citizen should be entitled to vote in our elections? Because they know the answer. The answer is they want everybody who's deemed to be a citizen, which is a resident of any city and town, to have the right to vote. And we believe that is improper. And frankly, it's unconstitutional and illegal. Only native or naturalized citizens currently in the federal level are entitled to vote. And we're enshrining that language again in the Colorado Constitution.
All right, Peter, you have 2.5 minutes for a rebuttal.
All right, thank you. I think the one point I'll rebut is just around my understanding of the effect that this constitutional amendment would have on the ability of 17-year-olds to vote in a primary election. My understanding is that that would be struck down because the language change in the Constitution, even though it's only 2 words, they're changing the word every to the word only, a. It will say only a US citizen who is 18 or older shall be able to vote. That's what the Constitution will say. It will eliminate the 17-year-olds. As to the point about whether it's an anti-immigrant amendment or not, I'm not going to rebut that. I think I'm going to just stand on my previous statement.
We will move on to Proposition 113, which is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. So Rose is the opposition viewpoint here, and you have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present about the National Popular Vote. My name is Rose Pugliese. I'm a Mesa County Commissioner and an opponent of the National Popular Vote. So during the 2019 legislative session, this bill was going through, and it had bipartisan opposition. And I was literally, there were so many bills going through this 2019 legislative session that I was focused on that the National Popular Vote wasn't on my radar. But I was walking down Main Street in Grand Junction and 5 people stopped me one day asking me what I was going to do to stop the National Popular Vote. And so the bill was signed into law, again, with bipartisan opposition from the legislature. And basically, we started a referendum process that had not been used since the 1930s to allow the people of Colorado to vote on this issue. We needed just under 125,000 signatures to make the ballot. We received over 228,000 from our over 2,200 grassroots volunteers on the ground. And what we found was this wasn't a rural-urban divide issue, that this was an issue that really affected the people of Colorado because their votes are personal. The National Popular Vote Compact will take Colorado's 9 electoral college votes and give it to a compact of states, irregardless of whether a presidential candidate is on Colorado's ballot and irrespective of the majority vote of the people of Colorado, which might not be in alignment with my personal vote, but I still think that Coloradans should be in charge of their votes for president, that we should make sure that we protect the Electoral College and the current system that we have. We have the popular vote in Colorado, and Coloradans should continue to stay in charge of that vote as opposed to large population centers like California and New York. And so we urge a no vote on 113. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. We'll move on to Maggie, who is the proponent opinion. Maggie, you have 4 minutes.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Murray, and I live here in Keystone. And I'm asking you to vote yes on Proposition 113, yes on the national popular vote. And I'm here strictly as a local citizen to share some thoughts on why I hope you'll support Proposition 113 with me. I think, as a lot of you know, I was raised as a Girl Scout, and Girl Scouts pledge to be honest and fair, to make the world a better place. And through Girl Scouting and through my family, I learned a really deep love of American democracy, of our Constitution, and of the importance of civic engagement. You know, we would stand outside the polls and hand out those little "I voted" stickers as people exited, and we never asked who they voted for. Everyone got a sticker because every vote counted. Proposition 113 asks you to affirm that principle, that every vote counts. Your vote, your neighbor's vote, and your family's votes. I know that each of you on this call cares about voting, right? Deep in your heart, you care about American democracy. Otherwise, you wouldn't be spending your Tuesday night learning about ballot issues with all of us. So together, we share that belief in democracy. Proposition 113 is about democracy as a sacred right in our republic, and the principle that every vote should count. Frankly, that your vote should count as much as your neighbor's vote, no matter who you vote for or where you live. So right now in Colorado, if you vote for the presidential candidate who loses the state, effectively your vote doesn't count. Under the national popular vote, every citizen in every state will count. And it's basically as simple as that. I do want to sidebar into some brass tacks for just a second. So in 2016, Colorado had 19 visits from the 2 major presidential nominees. But Colorado's politics have changed. We're just not a swing state anymore. Here in 2020, Cory Gardner's been clamoring to get Donald Trump here a lot more, trying to drive up turnout in his race. But Colorado's electoral votes don't matter to Donald Trump, so Gardner's stuck without his help. The votes that matter in this election are basically Pennsylvania, Michigan, Florida, and Wisconsin. They get all the attention, not Colorado. So we're being bypassed. And if that seems unfair, that Colorado voters don't matter, well, I agree with you. Voting yes on Proposition 113, yes on the national popular vote, will mean that your vote and my vote will matter as much as Mary Smith's vote in Scranton, Pennsylvania. That is fairness. That is democracy. So I'll wind up my time with a story. You know, my family members and I vote for totally different candidates and support different policies. But every election day, we call each other and ask, did you vote? Yep. Did you vote? Yes. I want every American citizen to feel that same pride, knowing that they're contributing to our democracy and knowing that their vote counts. For that reason, I ask you to vote yes on Proposition 113, yes on the national popular vote. Thanks.
Thank you. And Rose, you'll have 2.5 minutes for our rebuttal.
Thank you. My opponent talks about fairness and all of our votes counting, but I don't understand if a presidential candidate were to get Colorado's 9 electoral college votes, but was never on Colorado's ballot, how does my vote count? How does anyone in Colorado's vote count? And she's right that we have had presidential visits, even in Grand Junction. So not just in Denver, not just in the metro areas, but in Grand Junction where I live, we have had Democratic and Republican presidential candidates because Colorado matters. And I disagree that we are no longer a swing state. I think that there are reasons why the presidential candidates come here. They want to know our policy positions on national policies like water, infrastructure, and transportation. And so right now we have a say. Colorado would constitute 1.8% of the entire national population. How is that fair for Coloradans? Giving our voice and our vote to California and New York and thinking that presidential candidates will care about what Coloradans think is just not fair for us. And so I believe that Coloradans should be in control of our votes for president, that we do have the opportunity to influence each other. And I would much rather talk to my fellow Coloradans than try to influence people in California and New York. And so Colorado's votes for president should stay with Coloradans in Colorado. Please vote no on 113, and you can visit our website for more information at protectcoloradosvote.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. And then Maggie, it's back to you for 2.5 more minutes.
Thanks, Rose, for sharing your view and for coming here to share your opinion with Summit County voters. You know, I want to come back to what I think is the core principle. Voting yes on 113 means that every vote counts the same, no matter what state you live in. Rose kind of referenced talking about this boogeyman of New York and California. Well, 82% of voters live in states other than New York and California. And yes, Colorado has 9 electoral votes. Hopefully we have 10 after the census. If every Summit County resident completes their census, I'll put in that plug. But you can do the math, right? If you win 18% of the vote in those 2 states, it's not going to get you enough delegates to win the election. When you combine the 5 most populous states in this country, California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Pennsylvania, they basically split their votes 50-50 in the presidential race between Republicans and Democrats. So this bogeyman about New York and California, I find a little misleading. When every vote counts the same, which is the principle behind 113, minority party voters in every state will matter. And I expect we'll see more engagement here in Colorado from those national campaigns rather than less. I think in closing, just a few other points. The No on 113 campaign that Rose is a part of, you know, she touted how many signatures they were able to collect. And when you spend $500,000 collecting signatures, you're going to get pretty far. This did pass the legislature in 2019 with overwhelming support, but it's here for the voters, right? You get to decide. And I think that's ultimately the principle. If you believe in democracy, that voters should decide and that every vote should count. So in closing, yes on 113 is a vote in favor of the democratic principles that every vote counts and they count the same. It will increase Colorado's importance in the presidential election, I believe. It will enfranchise minority party voters at the state level, and it will bring us closer to just a more perfect union. So I hope you will please join me in voting yes on Proposition 113, yes in favor of the national popular vote. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Maggie. We will move on to Proposition 114. This is the gray wolf reintroduction. We'll get started with the viewpoint in favor of the proposition. So Jim, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, and I want to thank the Summit County Realtors and other that are hosting this event. I'm trying to make the camera or the video come on, but I can't seem to do it. So you may have to look at a blank screen until I figure this out. So just for backgrounders, and I also want to compliment Summit County Commissioners Tom Davidson and Karen Stiegelmeyer, who are on the program, or we're start my video. Thank you. There you go. All right. Welcome, Nicole. All right. So for background, I'm representing the Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund, the 501c4 that's promoting ballot Proposition 114, which mandates the restoration or reintroduction of gray wolves to Colorado public lands west of the Continental Divide. It does so by delegating or instructing Colorado Parks and Wildlife to use the best available science and public input of all citizens in the affected areas to devise a plan to both reintroduce wolves and manage those wolves to lead them to a successful recovery from their endangered species status, which they currently enjoy. We do so for a number of reasons. First of all, many of you are familiar with the fact that wolves were native to Colorado, but were deliberately exterminated by state and federal policy at the turn of the century and into the 20s at the behest of the agricultural community, which viewed the wolf as some sort of threat to the livestock industry. Nonetheless, ecologists, biologists, and anybody involved in natural science learned that all species present on the landscape were there for a very good reason. And when you remove an apex predator, the remaining wildlife on the landscape start to get out of balance. So first of all, restoring wolves restores balance to nature. Now, what does that mean? Well, the behavioral patterns of elk specifically, which is the main diet of wolves, is to congregate in large herds in river bottoms, riparian stream beds, and mountain valleys. When they do so, they denude those streams of willow and aspen. Willow and aspen are the preferred diet of beavers. So when you remove the willow and aspen, you chase away or remove the lumberyard for the beaver. You lose the beaver, you lose water storage. You lose water storage, you lose fish, insects, and songbirds. Conversely, when you bring back the apex predator, the wolf causes a different behavioral pattern on the part of elk. They disperse into the woods, into the forest. They create less damage in stream beds and creeks and rivers. And over time, the willows and aspen return, and the beaver return. They create dams, water storage, which is very important in high mountain valleys, especially as we have an increasingly warming climate. This is an effort that's been underway for over 25 years, ever since wolves were successfully reintroduced into the Yellowstone ecosystem and into the northern Rockies. It's an extension of a plan that's been envisioned by scientists for over 40 years, ever since the passage of the Endangered Species Act back in 1973. It is to be done by the expert biologists at Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Your time is up.
That's fine, thank you.
All right, Shawn, we'll go on to you for 4 minutes for the opposing viewpoint.
Thanks, Nicole. I appreciate it. Only in 2020, in the horrible year that we were having, would Colorado voters be asked to vote on a measure to introduce a species into the state that is already here. It's the middle of a global pandemic. We've had $3.3 billion hole shot in the state budget, and we're being asked to spend millions of dollars to introduce a species that is already in the state of Colorado. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has acknowledged the fact that there is a pack in Moffat County, quite a large one, in fact, so big that they're breeding. There's more than 100 reports of wolves present in the state of Colorado that are reported to Colorado Parks and Wildlife every year. The species is here. This is not the time, in the middle of a pandemic and economic ruin resulting from it, to spend hard-earned taxpayer dollars, which are short to education and transportation as a result of the budget cuts that the state has had to take, to spend millions of dollars introducing a species that is already here. My opponent talks about bringing balance back to the ecosystem. Folks, balance was lost when people entered the land. Wolves have been helpful in Yellowstone, to his point, but Yellowstone doesn't have skyscrapers. Yellowstone doesn't have 6-lane interstates. Yellowstone doesn't have transmission lines. We have 6 million people in the state of Colorado alone. That is 3 times more than Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana combined. There's a reason that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission has 4 separate times declined to introduce the species into the state of Colorado. And it's because it's a really bad idea for a lot of the reasons that I just presented to you. This would be the first time that we were ever to politicize wildlife biology in a way so as to introduce a species via the ballot box. No other state's ever done it before. And the reason is because it's a really bad idea. And in fact, the states where the wolves have been reintroduced and put on the land, that process was done in consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That process was done in consultation with those state fish and game and wildlife departments. It wasn't done via the ballot box. It was done through the collaborative process that has been managing wildlife in this state and in this country since Teddy Roosevelt. We've done it successfully. This is one of the best states in the country for managing our large and diverse herd of wildlife, big game animals, and the rest. And to go and do an end run around that process that has been so successful thus far, and in a fit of pique, ask the voters to completely go around the science and the established process by which we make these kinds of very complex determinations and put it into a simple yes or no question is really silly. And so we would ask for a no vote on Proposition 114, rethink wolves and allow Colorado Parks and Wildlife to manage the state's wildlife populations in the way that they have for the past many decades and have done it successfully.
Thanks, Shawn. Jim, I'll send it back to you for a 2.5-minute rebuttal.
Yeah, very, very quickly. Colorado voters make a wide variety of decisions on a multitude of policy issues ranging from taxes and spending, as Shawn Martini well knows, from the Farm Bureau, on energy regulation, on health care, on abortion. We treasure our access to the ballot, direct democracy to make important public policy commissions. We brought this to the ballot because the Fish and Wildlife Service, under political pressure from our opponents, the Farm Bureau, the Cattlemen's Association, but fighting reintroduction of wolves in the Southern Rockies for over 25 years, ever since they were reintroduced into Yellowstone. That's number one. Number two, the CPW Commission, as Martini knows, is a political body appointed by the governor, ratified by the state senate, which has overrepresented the agricultural interests of the state over the people's interest of this state, dominated by the hunting industry and industrial agriculture in this state. Number three, density of population. The Northern Rockies population density is approximately the same, 12.1 people per square mile, as Western Colorado, 12.4 people per square mile across all of Western Colorado public land. Next point, taxpayer involvement. There is no general fund taxpayer money involved in the management of endangered or threatened species in Colorado. It comes from a variety of funds raised within that are CPW, revenue to CPW, hunter license fees, various federal funds through the Fish and Wildlife Service, GOCO Species Conservation Fund. There could also be through legislative action. We could introduce new sources of funding, a wolf stamp similar to the habitat stamp. Next point, to the existence of the pack in Moffat County. 3 of the 5 animals that were verified in March were shot in May or late April up in Wyoming, just over the Colorado border. CPW has never proved that there's a den in Colorado. There may no longer be a pack in Colorado. A few animals does not make a migrating presence that's going to exist to create a viable presence in Colorado. The reason is the killing fields of Wyoming. Shawn's colleagues in Wyoming persuaded the Wyoming legislature, when wolves were delisted in Wyoming, to allow the killing of wolves using any means of take for the 87% of Wyoming that is no longer.
All right, Shawn, we will send it back to you for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting that the proponents on this issue have really had everything they've asked for given to them. Wolves have been introduced into Idaho. Wolves have been introduced into Montana. They've been introduced into Wyoming. They've been introduced into New Mexico. Frankly, and they've done it in a way that's consistent with the established process that both Colorado and all the other Western states do. It's a collaborative process that weighs all the people who would be potentially impacted by the decision. It weighs what the ecosystem is going to look like. It weighs the impacts on the species that's being introduced and the impacts on the species that would be predated by the wolves that would be reintroduced. And in this case, there's one place where the wildlife experts at Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the Parks and Wildlife Commission, which when this issue was presented to them in the past were all appointed by Democratic governors, I would point out, have said, no, it's not a good idea. That's in Colorado. And it's unfortunate that the proponents can't be satisfied with the fact that the species is getting ready to be delisted from the Endangered Species Act at the federal level because of the success in all the other states. And in this one state in Colorado, it's been determined it's not a very good idea multiple times over, both by Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And so do an end run around that and in a fit of pique, put it on the ballot and try and get the voters to do it for them. It's really sad because that process works well. You know, there are negative impacts to wolf reintroduction in the other states. It's very easy to talk about how wolves won't kill cattle, won't have any interaction with people when you're not the one whose cattle are being killed. Our producers on the Western Slope have significant concerns about this. But the bigger concern is breaking the process and making what should be a collaborative scientific decision the way it's been done for many decades in this state and politicizing that and turning to ballot box biology and politicizing science the way we've seen happen in Washington, D.C. It's really unfortunate. And that's why we think voters should vote no on Proposition 114. It's not a vote against wolves. It's not a vote saying you don't like the species. It's not a determination on what you think the science says is good or bad. It's a vote against an improper process trying to force a political solution to a very complex question that should not be based on politics, but should be based on the established process by which we make these decisions.
Thanks, Shawn. Go ahead and move on now to Proposition 116. So we're going to start with the con there. So you have 4 minutes, Halisi. Halisi, are you here? You are up.
Yes, I am. Forgot that I was on mute on my phone. I actually call in because I always have problems with my internet. I don't know that I need the whole 4 minutes, but I'm going to make it quick here. So I am against Proposition 116, which is a tax cut. There's several reasons why, and there is some information about how the economy works that makes it pertinent that we vote no on Proposition 116. So just a little bit of background. I spent about a half a decade working in venture capital. I have a business degree, and I spent the past 15 years helping small businesses grow until I took my current job. So, and which was about a year ago. So most of my time has been spent in the for-profit world helping businesses. And this is what I know. First of all, the economy, we are in a consumer-based economy. And so in order for the economy to work well, we need to have more money in people's hands. Now, this seems counterintuitive to the argument that I'm going to make. The argument is this: if we have this tax cut, you and I, the average taxpayer, will not get any more than about 37 to 57 bucks in our pocket annually. This, I don't know about you, I'm very, very much in the middle class. This is not going to make a difference for me. This is not going to help me buy another anything. Maybe not even a dinner for my family of 4. So what will it cost us? It's going to cost us approximately $154 million in our state budget, a budget that has already been cut by billions, right? And so as a matter of fact, let me get that exact number for you. I don't have it. I know I have it somewhere. I'll find that before I end. So what I do know is that this year we cut the budget by about $2.2 billion. Next year we might have to cut by $1.6 billion. That's what we're looking at. Where is that money coming from? That is from the general fund, which is used for discretionary purposes. Discretionary means education. It means safety net. It means healthcare. So all of these things are going to be cut from our budget this year and probably next year as well. This is not what we need in a state where 60% of our school districts are already having to cut days and only go to school 4 days a week. And they're doing that because they had to cut costs, because we as a state have decided we don't want to invest in our children. Now during COVID is not the time to cut $37 from my tax bill. It doesn't make sense. And so that's my argument.
Thank you. We will move on to Patrick for their proponent view. You have 4 minutes.
Great, and thank you for allowing us this opportunity. My name is Patrick McConnell, the Americans for Prosperity Colorado Issue Committee, and I'm here in support of Proposition 116. First, I'd like to begin by thanking our hosts for all their hard work in putting this together. It's an honor to be a part of this discussion. I think it's safe to say it's no secret that the most timely and significant barrier that we face today is the current economic recession. Families and businesses all over the state are struggling to make ends meet, and this November we can help by voting yes on Proposition 116. Now, the beauty of Prop 116 lies in its simplicity. It's a modest but much needed tax cut that reduces our income tax rate from 4.63% to 4.55%, benefiting all Coloradans equally. Now, this means that every Coloradan will get to keep more of their hard-earned paycheck, saving Colorado families over $150 million a year. And by reducing the income tax rate on all Coloradans, we can begin to help revitalize our economy after the devastating impacts of COVID-19. We can begin to help families and businesses get back on their feet, get back to work. In fact, a recent study from the nonpartisan Common Sense Institute demonstrated that Prop 116 will grow our economy by over $200 million. This allows us the opportunity to reinvest in our state's economy. It allows our businesses the opportunity to expand and hire new workers. It'll help make Colorado more competitive and help attract new and growing businesses and industries, create jobs, greater economic opportunity for everyone. Now, our opponents of Proposition 116 will tell you that it's not enough money to make a real difference, or it would negatively impact essential government services, or that it only benefits millionaires and corporations. But what they won't tell you is that Prop 116 does benefit all Coloradans equally. Even a modest income tax reduction such as this can help us get back on our feet and jumpstart our economy. Proposition 116 amounts to less than 0.5% of the annual state budget, which, as my opponent mentioned, already exceeds over $30 billion. What this comes down to is our legislature effectively prioritizing state spending while helping families and businesses recover in these challenging times. Because we all know that these are challenging times. In Summit County, as recently as July, unemployment figures showed that Summit County had the second highest unemployment rate throughout Colorado. Tourism, recreation, the hospitality industry, vacation rentals have been severely impacted by this pandemic, and it's had a major impact throughout the state. Since February, over 250,000 Colorado workers have dropped out of the labor workforce. From February to May, the labor participation rate dropped nearly 6 points. Unemployment is currently almost at 7.5%. And while these numbers are improving, Colorado families and businesses need a lifeline, and Prop 116 is that lifeline. And that's why it's earned the support of other nonpartisan organizations all over the state, from the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Colorado Women's Alliance. Even Governor Polis has said that he's long sought an income tax decrease, and that in this challenging time, Coloradans need tax relief. So Proposition 116 will allow us to reinvest in our economy, allow our businesses to expand and hire new workers, make us more competitive, create jobs and more economic opportunity. So help Colorado families and businesses get back to work, help get our economy back on track. In these challenging times, Coloradans need a lifeline, and Proposition 116 is that lifeline. So vote yes on Proposition 116. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Halisi, I'll send it back over to you for 2.5-minute rebuttal.
Great. Tax cuts do not grow the economy. That has been proven since the 1980s. Investments improve the economy. A tax cut of 0.5% or whatever is definitely not going to improve the economy. If you are a family making $25,000, that equals $20 per year. If you're a family making $50,000, that's $40 per year. $125,000, that's $100 per year. If you're a millionaire, you get nearly $1,000 tax cut. Yeah, I guess it is fair across the line. Those who are poor get less and those who are richer get more. But the bottom line is this: $125 million cut from our budget at a time when we are already struggling, where schools are struggling to survive, where our commons like firefighters, et cetera, that the state invests in are struggling to survive. Now is not the time to decrease revenue. The way we grow the economy is to invest, not to cut. We've been trying this since the 80s. It didn't work then. It hasn't worked when we tried it in the early 2000s, and it's not going to work now. That is the definition of insanity. So I'm asking you, please vote no on Proposition 116.
Patrick, I'll send it back over to you for the last 2.5 minutes.
Sure, and thank you again for the opportunity. These discussions are vital to Colorado, especially as we look toward the road to recovery. Now, our opponents made a number of different arguments. The first one, that it's only $40 or so a person, not enough to make a difference. You know, that's simply not true. For households making $50,000 a year, $40 is a tank of gas to get people to and from work. For households making $100,000 a year, $80 is a week's worth of groceries. This is real money we're talking about. And for many Colorado families, even a modest tax reduction such as this can make a real difference in their budget. And tax cuts do lead to investment. Tax cuts give families and businesses the opportunity to invest in themselves, invest in their communities, invest in their business. And that's really going to help us grow our economy. It's a nonpartisan study from the Common Sense Institute that says it'll grow our economy by $200 million. That's something we shouldn't scoff at. And I also heard that Proposition 116 only benefits the 1% corporations. When you really look at it, 90% of businesses are small and medium-sized businesses that are struggling to get by, struggling to get back on their feet. Many struggled to make payroll throughout the pandemic. Proposition 116 is that lifeline that can help. The fact is that Prop 116 will benefit every Coloradan. And with so many families and businesses struggling to stay afloat, I humbly urge you to get Colorado back to work, get our economy back on track. In these challenging times, Coloradans need a lifeline. Proposition 116 is that lifeline. Vote yes on Proposition 116. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. We will move on to our last statewide measure that we're going to talk about tonight, which is Proposition 118. This is the paid medical and family leave. We're going to get started with the position in favor of the proposition. That's going to be Faith. Faith, you have 4 minutes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. This is Sarah Faith Winter. Thanks for hosting us tonight and doing these conversations. Currently, right now, 4 out of 5 Coloradans don't have access to paid family leave. That comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And what that means in real life for real people is 4 out of 5 moms are going back to work 2 weeks after giving birth. So I want you to picture the last woman that you knew that gave birth. Maybe it was your sister, a friend, your wife. Now imagine at 2 weeks having to go back to work and what that meant for her and what it meant for her bonding time with that child. But this isn't just about mothers and children. This is also about cancer patients. So this is about cancer patients like Mary, who decided that she had to delay her second round of chemotherapy because she couldn't lose her paycheck. So at the time when she should be the strongest and be fighting for her life, she actually had to go back to work. And we have Chris, who had to take his dad off of life support from his break room because he couldn't lose his paycheck. And so when you have 4 or 5 Coloradans that don't have access to paid family leave, this is a very affordable way to do that. And this is affordable both for employees and employers. The average is only $3.83 a week. I ran a nonprofit. I was an employer. I had one single employee. She got pregnant. When I gave her paid family leave, it cost me $5,000 to cover her salary while she was off of leave for 3 months. Well, I think it's a much better deal to only have to pay $3.83 a week. And businesses agree. So for example, Catherine, who owns Merlin Instruments, she has 3 employees. She did the very best she could. She went to the private market. She wanted to find this product. She wanted to do right by her employees and offer this benefit. And you know what? It was hard to find. It was expensive. They didn't want to cover small businesses. And so for folks like Catherine, because employers of 10 and under are exempt from the employer profit, literally it's going to cost her nothing, but she gets to compete for the best and brightest employees in Colorado, because for her employees paying $3.83 a week, she can compete with the Googles and Amazons. We've heard from small employers all over the state, they're losing their employees because they can't offer this benefit. And so this is good for our economy. It's reliable, it's predictable, and it means that we're not sending moms back to work 2 weeks after giving birth. It means cancer patients can actually focus on surviving instead of putting their food on the table. This is a common sense solution that has been proved and trusted in 8 other states. By the way, every single other country in the world, other than Papua New Guinea and the US, has figured this out. 8 other states have figured this out. It has been strong, solvent programs in 8 other states. We can do this in Colorado. We can come together to make sure that you can be a responsible family member and a responsible employer and help our smallest employers compete for the best and brightest employees. So I invite you all to join me and vote yes on 118.
Thank you. And we'll move over to Christy. Christy, you have 4 minutes for your opposition viewpoint.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to visit with you all this evening and to be able to talk a little bit about this really important initiative that is on our ballot. I'm here this evening to ask you to vote no on Proposition 118. And to begin, I am a mom of 4, and I understand firsthand the importance of a mother having time off to bond with her child. I also had a grandmother who passed away from cancer and had to spend a significant time with her in helping through her process. I'm also a small business owner, and I understand the importance of a good employee and keeping those good employees. And what that means is helping our employees during times of need. Employers all across the state are doing that. This conversation this evening is not about whether or not helping our employees is the right thing to do. This conversation this evening is about the devil that is in the details of Proposition 118. To begin, Proposition 118 is a $1.3 billion tax increase that will be shared evenly between employers and employees. I don't have to tell any of you on the line that we are in the midst of a worldwide pandemic and a recession. Our businesses are in a time that they are struggling to recover. Over 4,000 restaurants have closed, and they're projecting 62% of total restaurants across the state will be closed permanently. The lodging and tourism industry has seen over $670 million in lost revenues, and the numbers are going up continually. Now is not the time to put an undue burden on our employers and employees. Secondly, this $1.3 billion tax increase is not only going to fund benefits to moms in need and fathers in need to take care of their as cancer patients. This $1.3 billion tax increase is also going to fund a new 200-person bureaucracy at the state of Colorado to manage this new division. Third, this particular proposal, while on its face, is here to help support families and people in time of need. We are questioning the solvency of this program. The proponents will tell you that only 5.3% of Coloradans will utilize this particular program, yet we also hear that 80% of Coloradans need it. If just 6.2%, which is just 1% over what the proponents say, use this program for 9.5 weeks, it will be bankrupt in year 2. So those employees, when they need these monies this most, the monies will not be available. That's why I'm here this evening to ask you to vote no on Proposition 118. This particular initiative is a $1.3 billion tax increase that creates a new 200-person bureaucracy. And if 6.2% of Coloradans use it, it will be bankrupt in year 2. Thank you for the opportunity this evening.
Thank you. And Faith, will go back to you for a 2.5-minute rebuttal.
Great, thank you so much. First of all, this isn't a tax increase. The Colorado Supreme Court has ruled on this 3 separate times. I trust the Supreme Court. This isn't a tax increase. The language on your ballot would be different if it was, because this is a fee, and those benefiting from this fee are both the employees and our employers. This is incredibly affordable. So collectively, when we all come together, it sounds like a big number, but for an average of $3.83 a week, why would you not want to be able to provide that for your employees? So for example, we have a brewery in Fort Collins, and he said for less than what a pint of beer cost, I can actually treat my employees fairly, because I don't want my employee who has COVID to come to me and say, I have to quarantine for 14 days. And I say, I literally can't afford to pay you, right? I mean, that's just common sense. $3.83 a week. It's incredibly affordable. Going back to solvency. So the study that was cited is the Common Sense Institute, which we've talked a lot about tonight, which the Colorado Sun calls a conservative leaning think tank. Well, what we did as the legislature is actually bring together a bipartisan task force with Republicans, with the business community, with Democrats. They issued 3 expert reports. All 3 expert reports came back and said, this program is indeed solvent. I promise you that this is going to be there. 8 other states have had such solvent programs that their legislatures actually passed laws to make sure that this fund wasn't raided. Other states that have this program have expanded the benefits of this program because it's solvent. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this program is about businesses, it's about employers, and it's about families. It's about moms like April. April's son has stage 4 cancer right now. She's a home healthcare worker. She has no paid time off. She can't hold her son's hand while he's going through chemotherapy without losing her paycheck and not being able to afford rent. We can do better by April. We can do better by our employees. We can do better by employers. And I hope that you all join me in voting yes on 118. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you, Faith. And then we'll go back to you, Christy, for your last 2.5 minutes.
Great. Thank you. And I appreciate Senator Winter. I know she is putting in a lot of time on this particular initiative, and your daughter's so cute. So, you know, I appreciate, again, the premise of being there and providing a benefit to your employees during their time of need. Again, this is not about not being there for our employees. What this is about is a $1.3 billion tax. And I appreciate the squabbling over the terminology, but the Oxford Dictionary says that a tax is a compulsory contribution to state revenue levied by the government on workers' income or business profits. So I believe this is a tax, a $1.3 billion tax that is shared equally between the employers and employees, that creates a new 200-person division at the state government. Lastly, with respect to the solvency, the actuarial analysis that was done by this bipartisan group that Senator Winter referenced, as well as the Common Sense Institute, they take numbers, they put numbers into a system and it plops out the numbers. What we are arguing is that the numbers that were put in to the actuarial analysis that was done by the state legislature was only a 5.3% usage rate. We looked at a 6.2% usage rate, and just 1% higher than what the legislature and this initiative have looked at says that it will be insolvent in 1 year. And had this study had the legislative study put those numbers in, they would have showed the same. So I'm asking you to vote no on Proposition 118. It's $1.3 billion tax on the backs of businesses and employees when they don't have it. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. We're going to circle back now to some local ballot initiatives. So we're going to do Measure 1A, which is Summit County's Gallagher Amendment Override. So Mike, we're going to start with you with the opposing viewpoint, and you have 4 minutes.
Well, let's start over. All right, so sorry about that. Mike Tabb, a full-time resident of Breckenridge, Colorado. And a no vote is not about the value of various county services. It's about finally holding our politicians accountable for a lack of discipline and prioritizing program spending. The ballot measure focuses on the feel-good aspect of government programs and ignores the very real contribution of local taxes to our cost of living. First, I want to give some numbers and reference numbers of why I'm urging a vote no. They're all in the Tabor notice of election that was mailed to every registered voter. The county's fiscal year impact statements in that notice, they're misleading in terms of confused references to tax revenues and fiscal year spending. And rather than use these figures, I pulled numbers straight out of the county's 2019 annual report, which showed that from 2014 to 2019, from all governmental activities, revenue increased from 54.9 million to 91.3 million. That's a $36 million increase, 66%. So what's driving up the huge increase in revenue? It's not population. The Colorado State demographer estimates that our permanent resident population from 2014 to 2020 increased from 29,000 to a little over 31,000. That's a 6.6% increase, 1,900 people. So it's obvious that we've been blessed with a growing tourism economy, which has increased sales taxes year after year, and rising property values, which has increased property tax collections year after year. From the same analysis, if I look at their annual report from 2014 to 2019, total county expenses from all governmental activities increased from 49 million to 67 million. That was an increase of 17 million. That's 35%. So if you compare that to the increase in revenues, where has the money gone? Well, the county has a unrestricted fund balance at the end of 2019 of $30 million and multiple restricted fund balances totaling $52 million. There's another list. If you go to their 2020 budget, they have repeatedly come back to us for special increases in tax revenues, and voters have been very generous with that. Most recently in 2018, they expected to collect in 2020, I know that's numbers down a little bit because of the pandemic, $10 million for recycling, mental health, fire mitigation, pre-K funding, and public facilities. So my point is, enough is enough. We need to stop and say no to this tax increase.
Thank you, Mike. Thomas, we'll go over to you for 4 minutes for the viewpoint in favor of the measure.
Thanks, Nicole. And also thank you to the Builders Association and to the Association of Realtors for sponsoring this tonight. Over the last 20 years or so, Summit County voters have repeatedly gone to the polls and they voted in favor of funding measures to address some of the more serious issues in our community. It's a long list of funds, and we should be proud as people of Summit County that we've stepped up and done what many other counties have not been able to do, and that is to convince a majority of our voters that these issues are important enough to us that we want to do something about it. And so they voted yes. They voted yes to open space funding, to wildfire mitigation, to mental health services, to preschool programs and childcare services, to so many different programs that are so very important for local working families to be able to survive in this county. What we're faced now with Gallagher and what the county commissioners here locally did with the 1A question is to say, do you want to do something to make sure that all of these programs that you voted yes for, when you actually increased your taxes in order to get these programs, now stay funded? Because if we don't vote yes on 1A, what you will see in the state of Colorado, because of Gallagher and because of Tabor, and the combined effect of those two amendments in the Constitution, will be the defunding and cuts to the very programs that you all thought were so important here that you voted yes to fund. With regards to our budget, of course, our budget is up because voters have voted yes on the funding for these programs. You get what you pay for, folks. And so whether it's Amendment B or 1A, the combined effect of Gallagher and Tabor will be a regular defunding over the next decade at least of all of these programs that are so important to you. There is no way that actual property value increases will keep up with the defunding of Gallagher for a place like Summit County. So if these programs continue to be important to you all, if you want libraries, if you want snowplows to plow the roads, if you care about recycling services, if you care about an operating 911 call center, if you care about the donations that we make right now to places like our care clinic, the Family and Intercultural Resource Center, the Summit Foundation, if you care about these things, then you'll vote yes on 1A. And with regards to Amendment B, please understand, all across Colorado, there are many communities that are going to lose their school services, they're going to lose their county services, they're going to lose their fire services and ambulance services if we don't vote yes on Amendment B. Thanks.
Thanks, Thomas. Mike, I'll send it back to you for a 2.5-minute rebuttal.
Sure. Well, first, in terms of this draconian drop in funding for services, I think that's just not true. If you look from their own budget documents from 2014 to 2019, the issue about the Gallagher Amendment and the drop of the assessed value of residential property, this is not a new issue. It has happened repeatedly since Gallagher was adopted. If you look at the county's budget document from 2014 to 2019, the property tax collections increased from 19.8 million to over $37 million. So that's an increase of 87% in property tax collections. So this notion that as Gallagher forces a ratcheting down of the mill levy and driving property, the assessed value has increased so dramatically that property tax collections have continued to increase. They talk about no increase in revenue. If you look at the numbers in that Tabor document, there's absolutely no way to measure that. Are they measuring an increase over their 2020 spending estimate of 77 million, an increase over their 2019 actual of 82 million, or their 2021 estimate of 80 million? There's no way to, this is a blank check. Second, when we talk about a precipitous decline, a decline in what? If you just look at the numbers in that Tabor document, is it a measure of from 2019 actual to 2020 estimate? Well, that's a drop of 4.7 million. That's 5.7%. Is it a drop from the 2019 actual to the 2021 estimate that without the proposed tax increase? That's a drop of 1.1 million. That's 1.4%. So I think this is just overplay of what is going to happen to county services. Their 2019 budget was $91 million. Okay. Combined with budgeting and these fund balances of $80 million out there, that's how we get through this temporary drop.
All right, thank you. And then Thomas Davidson, we'll send it back to you for 2.5 minutes.
So let's talk about how your property taxes are calculated. There are three numbers. The actual value of your home, that number is multiplied by this Gallagher number that's either a commercial number or a residential number. What Gallagher does is forces down the residential number. That is forecast by the state to be an 18% drop in this next cycle. We know that property tax funding will drop by 18% in Summit County in that next cycle because of Gallagher. We also know from our county assessor that we've only got a 7% increase forecast for actual property values. So those two numbers, right, then times the number of mills that people have voted yes for to fund their schools, to fund their fire districts, to fund the county services and the special programs that we all care so much about. That is the math of this. It's as simple as that. There's an 18% drop coming from the Gallagher Amendment, all right? That is certain and definite to happen. Don't talk about our entire county budget, because there are many other funding sources besides just property taxes. But understand that the programs that we care about most are funded by this property tax. They are going to be cut by Gallagher. The actual value in homes is not increasing to keep up with that. It's not forecast to in the next decade ahead. That's not only true here in Summit County, that is true throughout all of rural Colorado and the Western Slope. And I will point out to you all that we have many Republican legislators in this state that put Amendment B onto this ballot. Many Republicans understand that Gallagher is a disaster coming at us. And so the most important thing we can do here in Summit County is vote yes on 1A to ensure that that train wreck doesn't happen to all of the programs that we care so much about. If we care about this state and the funding of programs in this state, we should vote yes on Amendment B as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Thomas. We will wrap up with our last local ballot measure tonight, and that's measure 7A, the Colorado River Water Conservation District mill levy. So Karn, we don't have an opposing viewpoint on this one, so you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there for 7A. I'm Karn Stengel, County Commissioner, and I also represent Summit County on the Colorado River District Board. There are 15 West Slope counties and 500,000 people in the district, but we are small compared to the 40 million people who rely on the Colorado River. Our Blue River and tributaries are the lifeblood of our county, providing water for drinking, recreation, snowmaking, fishing, agriculture, and a beautiful view along our rec paths. Climate change has increased temperatures, evaporation, and decreased precipitation, meaning less water in our rivers, while Colorado's growing population is driving unprecedented competition for our water. Since 1937, the River District has been our advocate, supporting projects to protect and improve our water supplies and streams, and when necessary, litigating to keep West Slope water on the West Slope. The district has been a critical leader in the Colorado River Compact negotiations. This is a 7-state water sharing agreement that splits the water between upstream and downstream states. With warming climate, there has not been adequate water reaching Lake Powell. Colorado may be required to stop using water to send more water to Powell. It's more important than ever to keep the River District negotiating to protect our West Slope water. Declining revenue from reduced oil and gas activity in some counties and from Gallagher and Tabor effects have heavily impacted the district's budget. We've cut expenses by 15% with significant staff reductions, but the demands on our water are growing while the River District's resources are declining. So I'm asking you to support the critical mission of protecting our water by voting yes on 7A. This modest tax increase will mean an additional $1.90 per year for every $100,000 of home values.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight and for hanging in there with our technical difficulties early on. Hopefully we got those all out of the way tonight and we'll be smooth sailing tomorrow. So tomorrow we have our candidate Q&A. That's from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll have candidates all the way from local, state, up until national races. So make sure to join us for that. And I know there's also a vice presidential debate tomorrow evening. So if you can't join us, we will have it recorded and it will be up on our website as well. I want to also thank all of our sponsors this evening. In addition to the Summit Daily News, that's the Summit Realtors, Summit Chamber of Commerce, Always Mountain Time, Summit County Builders Association, and the Vacation Rental Management Association. I want to thank Marilyn for being our fantastic timer this evening. And then I want to remind everybody that ballots are going to be arriving in your mailboxes next week, so keep an eye out for those. We have lots and lots more election information on our website at summitdaily.com/election. We have Q&As with candidates. We've allowed all of them to write a commentary outlining their campaign priorities. We've written profiles and ballot explainers, and we're adding more and more content there every single day. So be sure to check it out if you have any questions. And we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Bye, guys.